When I had nothing, I thought of what I actually needed. I was sitting on the floor of my flat in East London legs, crossed back against the fridge gesturing at an empty cupboard like it might suddenly manifest a Tesco meal deal. My phone buzzed. Another payment failed notification. I didn't even flinch. When I had nothing, I thought I'd panic. That I'd spiral, rage, cry, beg the universe for a miracle. But instead, I paused. There was a strange kind of silence in the room, not peaceful, but sharp. The kind that slices through the noise in your head and leaves you face to face with yourself. No job, no savings, no dinner plans. Just me, a blinking cursor on my online banking app, and the realization that my usual coping mechanisms, spending, scrolling, pretending, weren't available anymore. And in that moment, something cracked open. For the first time in ages, I stopped thinking about what I wanted and started asking what I actually needed. Not a fancy coffee or a new phone upgrade. Something deeper, simpler. Rock bottom didn't feel like failure. It felt like a reset. Because when everything was stripped away, what I found underneath wasn't empty at all. It was honest. And it was finally quiet enough to hear. Life before the crash wasn't extravagant, but it was comfortable. I had a steady job with a marketing agency near Holborn. Decent pay, hybrid schedule, Friday drinks. I paid my rent on time, treated myself to Uber Eats more often than I'd admit, and lived like Amazon Prime was a basic human right. I didn't have savings, but I wasn't worried. Everyone I knew was just getting by, living month to month with the kind of optimism that came from never having faced a full-blown crisis. Then it came. First, the cost of living crept up. My usual 2.85 oat latte became 3.4 without warning. Electricity bills doubled. My rent jumped £200.50 overnight when my landlord adjusted for the market. My salary, of course, didn't budge. Then came the layoff, restructuring. They called it like that softened the blow. 1 month's notice, a polite email, and that was it. I walked out with a cardboard box and no plan B. The final punch? My car broke down on the A12 during a freelance meeting. £800.40 for repairs. I only had £100.12 in my account. I tried to keep it together. Pretended I was between projects, scrolling through LinkedIn like it was a job itself. Sent CVs into the void, ate toast 3 times a day to budget smart. But the truth? I was spiraling, quietly, rapidly. Every night I doom scrolled through news stories about inflation, housing crises, strikes, and shrinking grocery packs. I googled emergency loans, 0 deposit rentals. Can I sell plasma in the UK? No, not legally. I didn't tell anyone. Not really. Said I was fine, just resetting. But I wasn't resetting, I was shutting down. The terrifying thing wasn't that I had nothing, it was how fast it all disappeared. Like a magic trick. One day I was holding it all: job, stability, plans, and the next, I was gripping empty air, wondering what the hell just happened. It wasn't one disaster. It was 100 tiny cracks no one warned me about until the whole thing collapsed. And I realized I wasn't surviving the economy. I was surviving me pretending it would never affect me. It's strange, the moment life goes quiet. No notifications. No just checking in emails. No Deliveroo tracking screen to stare at while pretending dinner's on its way. Just silence. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed that night, wrapped in my dressing gown like armor, staring at the ceiling. My phone was on airplane mode, not to preserve battery, but to preserve my sanity. There was no money, no job, no plans, nothing on the calendar. Nothing in the fridge except a half-used jar of mustard and oat milk 2 days past the maybe stage. I wasn't rushing to fix anything. I couldn't. I had no fixes left. And in that stillness, just me, my slightly uneven bookshelf, and the hum of the boiler, I asked a question I hadn't dared to before. If I can't buy what I want, maybe it's time I asked what I actually need. Not need as in another CV template or some magic grant form. I mean really need. Peace of mind, rest, clarity, a breath that didn't carry panic with it. Turns out, nothing can be quite revealing. It holds up a mirror and strips away the excuses, the distractions, the dopamine-drenched nonsense. In the absence of options, I found space. And in that space, I finally started to hear the truth beneath the noise. I wasn't broken, just buried under things I never needed in the first place. When you strip life down to the bare floorboards, you start with the basics. Food, water, shelter, a working kettle. I made a list. Proper pen and paper style, something comforting about ink when your world feels digital and disconnected. I wrote down what I actually needed to survive, not just physically, but emotionally. Peace of mind, a sense of purpose, a reason to get out of bed before noon. I cancelled all my subscriptions, Netflix, Spotify, the gym I hadn't stepped foot in since last October. I swapped Uber Eats for rice and lentils, batch cooked like it was a religion. Honestly, I got weirdly good at making something out of tinned tomatoes and frozen veg. I deleted social media for a while, not in a dramatic DM me for my number kind of way, just quietly disappeared. Replaced it with walks. Actual, real-life walks through my estate, down the canal, past kids on bikes and old women with dogs too small for their coats. I called my mum, first time in ages, told her I wasn't doing great. She didn't offer money, just presents, which turned out to be enough. I messaged a mate I hadn't seen in a year and asked if he knew any work going. Humbling, yeah, but he came through. Small freelance gig, paid late, but paid. I even found a free finance course at the community centre Thursday nights, tea in a chipped mug, run by a retired accountant called Dennis, who smelled like printer ink and salvation. Dennis taught me how to build a basic budget. Not a sexy Excel one, a real one. The kind with rent and toilet roll on separate lines. Was it glamorous? Not even slightly. But it was grounding. Each small shift each, unremarkable, un-Instagrammable change stitched a bit of dignity back into my days. I wasn't rebuilding a life of luxury. I was rebuilding a life I could live with. One where my needs weren't drowned out by my wants. One where I could finally breathe. It started small, almost laughably small. A logo designed for a friend's cousin. 50 quid, cash in hand, delivered via WhatsApp. I did it from the library using borrowed Wi-Fi and a half-dead laptop balanced on my knees. And yet, it felt good. Honest. Like work I didn't have to fake a smile through. I picked up more little gigs. A flyer here, some copywriting there. Nothing that would land me on the cover of Forbes, but enough to top up the meter, refill the cupboards, and buy a hot coffee without checking my balance first. Turns out, lentils and library Wi-Fi can go a long way. I began to feel lighter, not because I had more, but because I needed less. That neediness, that desperation to always chase more status, more things, more noise has started to quiet down. I wasn't performing anymore. I wasn't building a life to impress LinkedIn connections or random people from sixth form who still watched my stories. I was building something that made sense, that fit me. Emotionally, I got sharper. I noticed patterns, like how I used to shop to avoid feeling lonely, or binge productivity podcasts when I felt insecure about my future. I didn't fix everything overnight, but I started making better choices slower, saner ones. I learned to celebrate the wins I used to overlook. Managing a week's meals on £20? Win. Paying a bill without flinching? Win. Saying no to a client who gave me anxiety hives? Huge win. And I learned to appreciate stillness. That rare, underrated moment where nothing is crashing or demanding or flashing on a screen. I used to think security came from money. Now I know it comes from understanding yourself, your triggers, your habits, your needs. The money started to trickle back in. But the real gain? Me. A version of myself I hadn't met before. One I actually liked. Life eventually leveled out. The income didn't come rushing back like some triumphant movie montage, but it returned. Slowly. Consistently. Enough to breathe again. I moved into a smaller Pliscosia, cheaper, easier to warm in winter. I set up a proper workspace near the window where the light hits just right around 10 a.m. I even bought a second-hand kettle that whistles when it's ready. It sounds like a tiny victory every time, but here's the twist. I didn't go back to chasing. No more constant striving, no more endless online cart filling, no more hustling for status symbols I didn't even want. I stopped confusing clutter for comfort. My wardrobe is smaller now, so is my to-do list. My life feels less like a race and more like a walk at my own pace. I still have moments of panic like when bills pile up or work slows, but I don't spiral like I used to. I've got systems, I've got perspective, and I've got proof that even when everything falls apart, I can build again. Not by grabbing for more, but by asking, honestly, what do I actually need? That question changed everything, because once you know what truly matters, life becomes quieter, clearer, kinder, and you stop chasing everything just to feel like enough. Moral lesson. People talk about hitting rock bottom like it's the end of the road. But for me, it was a mirror, a reset. A quiet room where all the noise finally stopped and the truth stepped forward. When I had nothing, I realized I didn't need half the things I used to chase. I needed peace. I needed clarity. I needed to learn how to live with myself, not just around my problems. And here's what no one tells you. Sometimes, survival isn't about building more, it's about carrying less. Less pressure, less pretending, less performance. It's about learning that needing help isn't weakness. Slowing down isn't failure. And starting over properly, quietly might be the bravest thing you ever do. Call to action. If this story hit home, if you felt that stillness, that panic, that quiet clarity, know you're not alone. We're not just surviving the economy, we're surviving the expectations that came with it. So if you're rebuilding one quiet, honest step at a time, follow for more real stories about getting through the mess without losing yourself in the process. And hey, subscribe, yeah? Not for motivation you'll forget in 10 minutes, but for truth, for tools, for reminders that you're allowed to pause. And that sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is need less.